So to start out, how were you involved with Rare Replay?
So when Rare Replay started, we knew that Rare was coming up to its 30th anniversary, and we wanted a way to kind of celebrate that properly, both for the studio and for the fans. So we kind of went through this big kind of process of looking at different things we could do to celebrate the studio. And to be honest, it was kind of like the obvious no-brainer thing that was always sat there, which was we should just take our games, bring them together, and kind of do a love letter and a kind of real kind of beautifully packaged. I'm trying to think of the right word. It was like a love letter back to our fans. Like, our fans have been so great to us. People who don't even know who Rare are. So we're not egotistical enough maybe to think that everybody knows who Rare are, but we thought, you know, everybody's been touched by one of Rare's games because they've been there 30 plus years. Every generation knows it. So whether you kind of, you know, you started in the Spectrum era and something like Jetpack. I know Jetpack was one of the first games I played at my cousin's house. I was dreadful at it, but it had an impact on me. You know, I knew it. It was like Jetpack. That's that game, you know, that I spent at my cousin's house and used to taunt me for. But then like something like Cobra Triangle, it's like, you know, throughout gaming history, everybody's been touched by Rare. So we thought, let's bring it all together. So, and there was kind of a few of us started working on how can we do this? How can we kind of present it? So my role at the start of the project was very much kind of just like bringing different ideas together, working with like lead designer Paul Collins and our art director Peter Hentz and our engineering lead James Thomas, and just kind of working out how we were going to do it and start looking at these are the games we're going to include, these are the games we're not going to include, and going through that process. Then as it's gone on, like the whole team's been a great kind of bonding exercise. We've all really come together. I was saying to you earlier, we've had this kind of sense that we're very responsible and very aware that we've got this 30 years of history, and we've kind of been given this wonderful opportunity to represent it as best we can. So, you know, as a team, we've kind of come together. So, as well as the day-to-day kind of team stuff as well, I've also been involved in a lot of the marketing as well. So things like the E3 trailer, and then all the different events we've gone to, and all the kind of fan things we've been doing as well. So that's the best thing about Rare. You get to do a bit of everything, and you get to really kind of show your love and passion in different ways.
So what did you find the largest challenge during development?
I'd say picking which games went onto the list. We know we wanted to do 30 games. As I'm sure you're aware, Rare has a lineup of like 120 plus titles to pick from. So we're actually going in and thinking, these are the games that best represent Rare. So we kind of gave ourselves some very strict creative guidelines and pillars. I say strict, we came up with them ourselves, but it was stuff that we wanted to, does this represent Rare? Does it kind of showcase what Rare's about? Is it the characters, is it the worlds, all the things that we felt was special and really kind of captured the very essence of the studio. And then we kind of had to go, here's all the games, which ones fit it, which ones match all these principles we've set out for ourselves. There was obviously a lot of arguing, because personal opinion comes into it as well, and you know, my game, like, you know, something like Cobra Triangle, I'd have fought for that, you know, to the death. It's like, something like Cobra Triangle I'd love. Luckily that was in anyway. So I'd say kind of getting that list down to a manageable amount, but then that kind of final bit of going, these are the games we have, how do we get it down to 30? And obviously, you know, there's games that I may have loved that didn't quite make it in, but we wanted to have a rounded package that represented everything and allowed everyone that special moment in there. And it's like, you know, you look and obviously you've got the 3 Banjo-Kazooie games in there, and you think, well, we'll put all 3 Banjo-Kazooie games in because it gives that kind of nice narrative, you get to see how it's progressed, all the different elements to it. And then someone else might argue, well, we don't need 3 Banjo games in there. And it's like, well, of course we need 3 Banjo games. And so I'd say it was a challenge, but a wonderful, wonderful problem to have. It's like, you know, the best kind of challenge you could ever want.
Rare Gamer, we love the snapshot feature. How did that come about?
So the snapshot feature came about, we were aware that some of the older games in there, kind of like the stuff from the 80s, a lot of people maybe wouldn't be as knowledgeable of those games. And we understood that, you know, people want to be able to dip in and experience some of these games without necessarily putting the kind of time and effort that initial demand that older games have, because they're quite difficult in a sense that kind of like more, you know, newer gamers, and I say newer, I don't mean that in a pejorative way, like gamers like me as well, it's like you go back to older games and you realise, because they're kind of structured slightly different and much kind of harder from the offset, we wanted to make sure that people could have a nice way of experiencing them without then having to kind of not go into the game because they felt it off-putting. So one of the first things we wanted to do with the snapshots was give a kind of accessible chunk of gameplay that people could play it and go, this is great, and then go and discover the full game. But obviously, at the same time, once we started doing that and digging into the ROMs and actually looking at how the games work, we realised there was a lot we could do with them. So one of our lead designers, our senior designer, rather, Chris Davis, kind of like led the snapshots, and so he just spent months just kind of going in and just tweaking stuff and finding these wonderful kind of concise little moments in there. So I think the best thing with snapshots, the reason I love the snapshots so much is they allow you to experience games you might already know in different ways. They kind of really pull out those little challenging moments, like obviously Infinite Turbo Tunnel being a great example that everyone talks about. It's like, let's take a moment that is kind of notorious and then let's just make it more notorious. But as well as that, they allow you that kind of, just that little kind of way of getting in, bite-sized. I'm interested in seeing what this game's about. I don't necessarily know what it's about, so it's a good way to get in there. So I think, yeah, the snapshots, twin purpose. You know, they're great for people who love the games and want that extra challenge. Complete as well. They give people the opportunity to get into those games and experience them for the first time.
What is your favorite lyric or moment in the Rare Replay theme song?
The Rare Replay theme song. So the interesting thing about the Rare Replay theme song is obviously, as a studio, we recorded that, and you know, we'd had that for a few months before it got released publicly when we did the when we used it as like a public announce around our pre-order. The best thing is that that song was stuck in my head and everyone at the studio's head for like months, and it was such a cathartic thing to see it seep out and just infect everybody else who ever heard it as well. I just, in terms of a favourite bit, I like, I think it would have to be the, I'm trying to think, so obviously I like the, this is going to look like I don't know the song. Trust me, I know it. I was sat by the guys when they wrote it. It's like, the bit that gets stuck in my head continuously is the Ghoulies into Conquer. I don't know why, that little nugget is just there, just permanently. Rupert got by Ghoulies and Conquer grabs the cash. It's like, it haunts me in the best way possible. It's just constantly swinging around in my head. I just think that theme tune couldn't sum up Rare better. It's just, it's everything. You know, you've got Robin Beanland in there, you've got Paul Collins and Chris Alcock who did the lyrics, the wonderful kind of visuals, all those characters, and there's so much to see in there. I mean, obviously working on it, we know what's in there, but there were so many little Easter eggs and little hidden characters, and you still get people going, who's that there? And it's like, well, that's for you to find out. But yeah, that theme song, I was on the taxi on the way here today, I was singing it without even knowing it. It's just, it's like an earworm of the most epic proportions.
Maybe on that similar note, what aspect of Rare Replay are you most proud of?
I think I love that we managed to present it in a way that took what was kind of quite disparate titles. You know, you've got, I've said it before, but you have something like, just looking at the 360, you've got something like Perfect Dark Zero at one end of the spectrum, and you've got Viva Pinata at the other. So that challenge of how do we bring this together, because we knew we didn't want it to be just a list. Like, the one thing we didn't want was a list of 30 games, effectively executables. You click a button and you go into the game. It's like, that wouldn't be Rare. You know, it wouldn't feel like we treated the games with the reverence they deserve, the love that we tried to put into everything. So I think the thing I'm most proud of is that we've brought it together into this cohesive whole. So using the theatre metaphor, which was, you know, we looked at different ideas when we were developing it and how we could bring these things together, but theatre seemed like something where we could just take it and, you know, it made sense for all these characters to be in that same place. It allowed you to have these very disparate styles, but also kind of make it very cohesive. So I think with the fact we've wrapped it in this beautifully presented style, and then also included things like the video documentaries that we have in there, you know, and, you know, gone back to people who were obviously there in Rare's founding and were there in the past, and people who still work at Rare, and just kind of united that Rare family again to talk about everything that makes Rare Rare. I think we've done as a whole, and obviously this is not taking into account the games themselves, which kind of talk for themselves, but I think just bringing it all together and making it feel like this wonderful, loved collection, I'd say is something I'm exceptionally proud of. And I know I've said it to you before, it's like, there was a great responsibility, it felt like, on the team to get that right, and I'm glad that it feels like we did, and we've made it into something which, the 30 games are there, and the 30 games speak for themselves because they're so wonderful, but hopefully we've added to that by bringing it all together the way we have.
In your opinion, what's the hardest achievement to unlock in Rare Replay?
The hardest, well, personally, I'm dreadful at Snake, Rattle and Roll, so anything in Snake, Rattle and Roll is just, I just find that game challenging, but I've kind of plugged away at it entirely. In terms of what's the most difficult achievement all up to unlock, I don't know, that's a difficult question. It depends what game you're good at. Like, as I say, somebody else like you could just go Snake, Rattle and Roll, that's a doddle to do. You know, I've blitzed through that game, whereas I just could be, you know, in that for hours. I think, if you haven't already kind of brought over achievements from Pinata, I think some of the later Pinata achievements are always difficult. I do love the new, obviously all the new achievements we put in there, and some of the names and some of the little nods and Easter eggs we put in there. We're really hoping people appreciate and get what we were trying to do there and see some of them. We had great fun with the achievements.
Which Rare titles didn't make the cut? What was meant to be game 31 in that respect?
So obviously when we were kind of whittling it down to that final 30, there was games that fluctuated, and I think one of the ones that was almost in and then wasn't in was Pentagram. We looked at that, and it's a great game, and it kind of completed that whole kind of cohesion that we wanted with here's all the different chapters. But then it's like, I think with everything, we know we wanted 30, so it was a case of what do we want, what don't we want, and so again it was a case of let's put forward all the different arguments and let's look at it, what we love, what we don't love, and everybody has an opinion. But yeah, I'd say there was plenty of games that didn't make it in there, but I really think that the games that are in there represent Rare. Like, I don't feel we could have put 30 games in there that better represent that kind of love and creativity for worlds and characters that Rare's all about. So I think we got it right, and that might sound big-headed to say that, but I genuinely think we got the 30 games right.
Do you have a personal favourite title in the collection?
Can I cheat and have... Yeah, okay, so I'm cheating. So Cobra Triangle, that was like one of the first games that I, as a kid, ever got obsessed with. So the fact that I've been able to revisit that, like, as my 20 years on, is wonderful. Battletoads Arcade's been a revelation to me. Just the ability to kind of jump into that game and just seeing people be able to, when we're at events and at home, just people just being able to jump in and play that game is fantastic as well. And it just looks gorgeous as well. It has that kind of just such vibrant feel to it. And then Viva Pinata would be my other one. In terms of games, that is just a game that has so much depth, so much replayability. We've said that the collection has over 700 hours in it, but you could easily put over 700 hours just into Viva Pinata, and that game, to me, really does represent a lot of what Rare's about. And obviously it was the first game I worked on at Rare, so it has a really special place for me as well. So I'm going for 3 there. I love every other game in there as well. There's not a game I don't like in there, which is, I think, testament to the collection as a whole.
There you go. Is there anything else you'd like to share, behind-the-scenes anecdotes or threat to Captain Bones, for instance?
Captain Bones. Captain Bones isn't here. I would love it. Look at it.
How do you know he's not? That's the question.
Captain Bones could be here. Who knows? He's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Behind-the-scenes anecdotes. I mean, other than the fact we had great fun and got to meet all of the people, maybe who aren't at Rare now but are still part of that Rare family, and just bring everyone back together, I think there isn't that many anecdotes, because hopefully every anecdote that we had is included in Rare Replay and can be seen there for anybody who loves Rare or has loved any of our games, whether it be the videos or the way we presented it. It's us kind of opening the doors. And when I was a kid, I kind of grew up living near Rare, and Rare was just like this kind of weird, like, I couldn't get my head around that people who made these things were so close. It's like, how can those people live so close to me? And it was just this kind of Willy Wonka-esque place that was just there, and I never knew where it was, and you could never find it, and I'd struggle to find it now if I didn't work there, but it just gave it that mystique, and hopefully we've opened the doors enough that people can now see Rare and kind of understand the culture of Rare and what we've done over the years, but we still kind of retain that magic as to how we actually create these things. So in terms of anecdotes, I'd say hopefully everything's there for you to see, but there's obviously the little bit of magic that we just have to keep hidden away to stay Rare.